Amara Jenkins was 10 years old when she decided to save every penny she could earn. She lived in a small apartment with her grandmother, Margaret, who had raised her since she was 3 years old. Her mother had passed away when Amara was very young, and she barely remembered her. But her grandmother had always been there, making her breakfast every morning, helping her with homework, and tucking her into bed every night. Amara's grandmother was getting older now. She was 72 years old, and walking was becoming harder for her every day. Amara noticed how her grandmother held onto the walls when she moved around the apartment. She saw how long it took her to walk to the mailbox outside their building. She heard the small sounds of pain her grandmother made when she thought no one was listening. One day, Amara asked her grandmother why she didn't use a wheelchair. Her grandmother smiled and said those things cost too much money. They were living on her grandmother's small pension from her teaching job. There wasn't extra money for things like wheelchairs, especially the nice ones with motors that could move on their own. That night, Amara made a decision. She would save money and buy her grandmother a motorized wheelchair. She didn't tell her grandmother about her plan because she wanted it to be a surprise. She just knew she had to do something to help the woman who had given up everything to take care of her. Amara started looking for ways to earn money. She was too young to get a real job, but she was smart and determined. She began by asking the neighbors in their building if they needed help with anything. Mrs. Peterson on the 3rd floor needed someone to walk her dog every afternoon. Mr. Chen on the 1st floor needed help carrying his groceries up the stairs. The young couple in apartment 2B needed someone to water their plants when they went away for the weekend. Amara took every job she could find. She walked dogs, carried groceries, swept porches, and pulled weeds from small gardens. She babysat her younger cousins when her aunt needed to run errands. Every Saturday, she helped at the community center, cleaning tables and stacking chairs after events. They paid her a small amount, but to Amara, every dollar mattered. Her grandmother noticed how busy Amara had become. She asked her what she was doing with all the money she was earning. Amara just smiled and said she was saving for something special. Her grandmother told her she was proud of her for learning to save money at such a young age. Amara kept a blue piggy bank in her room. It was ceramic and shaped like a fat pig with a coin slot on its back. Every time she earned money, she put it straight into the piggy bank. She never spent any of it on candy or toys or games. She had a goal and nothing was going to stop her from reaching it. Months passed. The piggy bank grew heavier and heavier. Amara would shake it sometimes just to hear the coins rattle inside. The sound made her happy because it meant she was getting closer to her goal. She had looked up motorized wheelchairs online at the library. They cost anywhere from $400 to several $1,000s. She decided to aim for $500. That would be enough for a basic motorized wheelchair. After 1 year of saving, Amara carefully broke open her piggy bank. She counted the money and had $237. She was disappointed at first because it seemed so far from her goal. But then her grandmother reminded her that saving money takes time and patience. Amara bought a new piggy bank and kept going. She took on more jobs. She helped Ms. Rivera clean her apartment every other week. She raked leaves in the fall and shoveled snow in the winter. Her hands got blisters sometimes, and she was often tired after school. But every time she felt like giving up, she thought about her grandmother struggling to walk. That thought kept her going. 18 months after she started saving, Amara knew she was close to her goal. One Sunday evening, she decided it was time to count all her money. She broke open her second piggy bank and spread all the coins on her bedroom floor. Her grandmother came in to help her count. There were quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies everywhere. They sorted the coins into piles. Then they made stacks of equal amounts. It took them almost 2 hours to count everything. When they finished, Amara couldn't believe it. She had $437 in coins. Her grandmother hugged her tight and cried. She told Amara she had never known anyone so young with such a big heart. Amara explained her plan to buy a motorized wheelchair. Her grandmother cried even more and said Amara didn't have to do that. But Amara insisted. She said she wanted to do this because her grandmother had done so much for her. They decided that Amara would open a bank account. Her grandmother explained that keeping so much money in coins at home wasn't safe. Plus, if Amara put the money in a bank, it would earn a little bit of interest, which meant the bank would pay her extra money just for keeping her savings there. Amara had never been inside a bank before. The idea made her nervous but also excited. Her grandmother told her that opening a bank account was an important step in growing up. It would teach her about managing money and being responsible. The next day after school, Amara prepared for her trip to the bank. She found all the paper coin rolls her grandmother had saved from the grocery store. She spent the entire evening rolling her coins. Quarters went in orange rolls, dimes in green rolls, nickels in blue rolls, and pennies in red rolls. Each roll had to have a specific number of coins. Her grandmother helped her write the amounts on each roll with a marker. When they finished, they had 43 rolls of coins. Amara packed them carefully in her school backpack. The backpack was heavy, but Amara didn't mind. This was her hard work, her sacrifice, her love for her grandmother, all packed into one bag. That night, Amara could barely sleep. She was so excited about going to the bank the next day. She had never done anything this grown-up before. Her grandmother had told her which bank to go to. It was called First Community Bank, and it was only 4 blocks from their apartment. Her grandmother had been using that bank for 30 years. She said they were good people there. Tuesday morning came. Amara got dressed in her best clothes. She wore the navy blue dress her grandmother had bought her for church. She wanted to look nice because her grandmother had told her that going to the bank was important business. She combed her hair and put it in 2 neat braids. She looked at herself in the mirror and practiced what she would say. After school, Amara walked straight to the bank. She didn't stop to talk to her friends. She didn't stop to look in the shop windows like she usually did. She walked with purpose, her heavy backpack on her shoulders, her heart beating fast with excitement. The bank was a big building with glass doors and marble floors. Amara had walked past it many times but had never gone inside. She took a deep breath, adjusted her backpack, and pulled open the heavy door. This was it. She was about to open her first bank account with money she had earned all by herself. She felt proud and grown up and ready to make her grandmother's life a little bit easier. The inside of First Community Bank was cold from the air conditioning. Amara stood just inside the glass doors for a moment, looking around. The floor was shiny marble that reflected the bright lights above. There were rope barriers that guided customers to different areas. A few people stood in line waiting for the tellers. Everyone looked busy and important. Amara felt small in this big space. Her backpack suddenly felt even heavier on her shoulders. She walked slowly toward the main counter, her church shoes making small clicking sounds on the marble floor. She noticed that some of the adults in the bank looked at her. A woman in a business suit glanced at her and then looked away. A man in line checked his watch and seemed impatient. There were several employees behind the counter. Amara wasn't sure who to talk to. She saw a man standing at a desk near the counter. He was tall with brown hair and wore a dark suit with a blue tie. His name tag said, Michael Davidson, Loan Officer. He wasn't helping anyone at the moment, so Amara walked up to him. She cleared her throat softly. Michael Davidson was looking at his computer screen and didn't notice her at first. Amara cleared her throat again, a little louder this time. The man looked down at her with a blank expression. "Excuse me, sir," Amara said politely, just like her grandmother had taught her. "I would like to open a bank account, please." Michael Davidson stared at her for a moment. His eyes moved from her face to her backpack and then back to her face. He didn't smile. He didn't say hello. He just sighed like Amara was bothering him. "A bank account?" he said. His voice was flat and unfriendly. "How old are you?" "I'm 10 years old, sir," Amara replied. "My grandmother said I could open an account here. She's been a customer for 30 years. Michael Davidson crossed his arms. "Does your grandmother know you're here?" "Yes, sir. She helped me prepare my deposit last night." Amara carefully took off her backpack and placed it on the counter. The heavy bag made a loud thud. She unzipped it and started to take out the rolled coins. "I've been saving for 18 months and I have $437. She began placing the coin rolls on the counter. Orange rolls of quarters, green rolls of dimes, blue rolls of nickels, and red rolls of pennies. She had organized them so carefully the night before. Each roll was labeled with the amount written in her grandmother's neat handwriting. Michael Davidson looked at the coins and his face changed. His expression became annoyed, almost angry. He didn't reach for the coins. He didn't count them. He just stared at them like they were garbage someone had dumped on his clean counter. "We don't accept this kind of deposit," he said loudly. Several people in the bank turned to look. Amara felt confused. "But my grandmother said banks take all kinds of money. She said coins are still money. Where did you get all these coins?" Michael Davidson asked. His voice was even louder now. Did you steal them from somewhere? Amara's eyes went wide. She felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. No, sir. I earned every single coin. I did chores and jobs for 18 months. I walked dogs and helped neighbors and— Right, Michael Davidson interrupted her. He said the word like he didn't believe her at all. A kid your age with over $400 in coins? That doesn't make sense. These probably came from somebody's coin jar or a parking meter or something. Tears started to form in Amara's eyes. She could feel her face getting hot. Other people in the bank were definitely watching now. She heard someone whisper behind her. An old man in line was frowning. A woman with a baby was staring. I didn't steal anything, Amara said. Her voice was shaking. I saved this money. I worked hard for it, Michael Davidson shook his head. He started pushing the coin rolls back toward her backpack. Look, kid, I don't have time for this. This bank is for serious customers who understand how real banking works. We're not a charity. We're not here to deal with whatever this is. But my grandmother— I don't care about your grandmother, Michael Davidson said. His words were sharp and mean. You're wasting my time and everyone else's time here. Take your coins and go buy some candy or whatever kids do. This is a professional establishment, not a piggy bank. Amara felt tears rolling down her cheeks now. She couldn't stop them. Her hands were shaking as she tried to gather up her coin rolls. Some of them slipped from her fingers and fell. One roll hit the floor and broke open. Quarters scattered everywhere, rolling across the shiny marble floor. Great, just great, Michael Davidson muttered. He didn't help her pick them up. He just stood there looking annoyed. Amara dropped to her knees and started collecting the quarters. Her vision was blurry from tears. She could see the legs of other customers around her. Someone stepped around her like she was an obstacle in the way. Another person sighed impatiently. A woman's voice said, Is everything okay here? Amara looked up and saw a female bank teller standing nearby. She looked concerned. It's fine, Jennifer, Michael Davidson said. Just a kid who came in with a bunch of coins. I'm handling it. The teller named Jennifer looked at Amara on the floor collecting quarters. She looked at Michael Davidson. For a moment, Amara thought Jennifer might help her. But Jennifer just nodded and walked back to her station. She didn't say anything else. She didn't offer to help. She just went back to work like nothing was happening. Amara gathered all the quarters she could find and stuffed them back into her backpack. She grabbed all the coin rolls from the counter, not caring anymore if they were organized. She just wanted to leave. She wanted to disappear. She had never felt so embarrassed and ashamed in her entire life. As she zipped up her backpack, Michael Davidson said one more thing. Next time, maybe learn how the real world works before you waste people's time. Amara didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat felt tight like she couldn't breathe properly. She lifted her heavy backpack onto her shoulders. It felt twice as heavy now. She turned around and walked toward the glass doors as fast as she could without running. She passed the people waiting in line. They all watched her. Some looked confused. Some looked uncomfortable. One older woman looked angry. But Amara didn't know if she was angry at her or at what had just happened. None of them said anything. Nobody stood up for her. Nobody told Michael Davidson he was wrong. Amara pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped outside. The afternoon sun was bright and warm, so different from the cold, unfriendly bank. She walked quickly down the sidewalk, away from the bank, away from all those people who had watched her humiliation. When she got to the corner, she stopped. She leaned against the brick wall of a building and let herself cry. All the pride she had felt just 30 minutes ago was gone. All the excitement about opening her first bank account had turned into shame and hurt. She thought about the 18 months of hard work. She thought about the blisters on her hands from raking leaves. She thought about the cold winter days when she had shoveled snow. She thought about all the times she had wanted to buy something for herself, but had put the money in her piggy bank instead. And for what? To be accused of stealing? To be treated like she was nothing? To be told she was wasting people's time? Amara wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She started walking toward home. Each step felt heavy. Her backpack full of coins felt like it was full of rocks instead. She didn't understand what had happened. She had done everything right. She had saved money. She had been polite. She had worn her nice dress. She had said sir and please just like her grandmother taught her. But none of that had mattered. The man at the bank had looked at her and decided she wasn't important. He had decided she was lying. He had decided she didn't belong there. And Amara didn't understand why. As she walked home, she thought about what she would tell her grandmother. How could she explain what happened? How could she describe the way that man looked at her, like she was something dirty? How could she put into words the feeling of being small and unwanted and accused of being a thief? When Amara reached her apartment building, she saw her grandmother sitting on the front steps. Her grandmother was waiting for her, probably excited to hear about the bank. When Margaret saw Amara's face streaked with tears and full of pain, she immediately stood up, her face filled with concern and worry. "Baby, what happened?" her grandmother asked, moving toward her as fast as her old legs could carry her. Amara dropped her backpack on the ground and ran into her grandmother's arms. She buried her face in her grandmother's shoulder and cried. She cried for the dream that had been crushed. She cried for the hard work that had been dismissed. She cried for the unfairness of it all. Margaret Jenkins held her granddaughter tight on the front steps of their apartment building. She could feel Amara's small body shaking with sobs. Margaret's heart was breaking, but she kept her voice calm and steady. She had learned long ago that children needed strength from adults, especially in moments of pain. "Come inside, baby," Margaret said softly. "Come inside and tell me everything." They went up to their apartment on the second floor. Margaret held Amara's hand the whole way. Inside, she led Amara to the couch and sat down beside her. She got a box of tissues from the kitchen and waited patiently while Amara cried. Margaret didn't rush her. She just rubbed her back in slow circles, the way she had done when Amara was a little girl with a scraped knee. When Amara's crying slowed down, Margaret spoke. "Now tell me what happened at the bank. Tell me everything. From the moment you walked in." Amara took a shaky breath and started talking. She told her grandmother about the cold marble floors and the man named Michael Davidson. She described how he looked at her coins with disgust. She repeated the words he had said about stealing and wasting time. She told her grandmother about the coins falling and scattering on the floor. She talked about the other employees who watched but did nothing. She described the teller named Jennifer who could have helped but walked away. Margaret listened to every word. Her face stayed calm, but inside she felt anger building like a fire. She had lived 72 years on this earth. She had been a teacher for 40 years. She had raised her own children and now her granddaughter. She had faced discrimination before many times. But hearing about it happening to her precious Amara, her baby who had worked so hard and wanted nothing more than to help her grandmother, made Margaret's blood boil. When Amara finished talking, Margaret pulled her close again. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "What happened to you today was not your fault. Do you hear me? Not one bit of it was your fault." "But maybe I shouldn't have brought coins," Amara said. "Maybe I should have—" "No," Margaret interrupted firmly. "Money is money. Coins are legal currency. Banks accept coins every single day. That man was wrong. He was wrong about the coins, he was wrong to accuse you of stealing, and he was wrong to treat you that way." "Then why did he do it?" Amara asked. "Why was he so mean to me?" Margaret sighed. This was a conversation she had hoped to delay for a few more years. But life didn't always wait until you were ready. Sometimes people make judgments about others based on how they look. They see a young black girl and they make assumptions. They decide things about her without knowing anything about her. That man saw you and decided you weren't important. He decided you didn't deserve respect. And that, my dear child, is not about you. That's about him and what's wrong inside his heart. Amara was quiet for a moment thinking about this. "So it's because I'm black?" "I think that was part of it, yes. And because you're young. And because he's the kind of person who judges people before knowing them. People like that exist in this world, baby. But that doesn't make it right, and that doesn't mean we accept it." "What can we do?" Amara asked. "He won't get in trouble. He works at the bank. They'll believe him, not me." Margaret smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that said she knew something Amara didn't. "Oh, baby. Don't you worry about that. Your grandmother isn't going to let this go, not even a little bit." That evening, after Amara had eaten dinner and calmed down, Margaret got to work. She sat at the small table in their kitchen with a notebook and a pen. She wrote down everything Amara had told her. She wrote down times, names, descriptions, and exact words as much as Amara could remember. She wrote down that the teller Jennifer had seen what was happening but did nothing. She documented everything like the organized teacher she had been for 40 years. Then Margaret started making phone calls. Her first call was to her nephew, James. James was 35 years old and worked as a journalist for the local newspaper. He had always been a smart boy, and Margaret was proud of the man he had become. "James, it's your Aunt Margaret," she said when he answered. "I need to talk to you about something important. Something that happened to Amara today." Margaret told James the whole story. She could hear him getting angry on the other end of the phone. "That's unacceptable," James said. "Aunt Margaret, I want to write about this. People need to know this is happening." "I was hoping you'd say that," Margaret replied. "But we need to be smart about this. We need to do it right." "I'll come over tomorrow after work," James said. "I'll interview Amara and get all the details." "This is news, Aunt Margaret. This is a story people need to hear." Margaret's next call was to Patricia Williams. Patricia had been Margaret's colleague when they both taught at Lincoln Elementary School. Now Patricia served on the regional board of directors for First Community Bank. They had been friends for 30 years, and Margaret knew Patricia would want to know what was happening at one of her bank's branches. Patricia answered on the third ring. "Margaret, how are you, old friend?" "I'm angry, Patricia, and I need your help." Margaret told Patricia what had happened. There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds. Then Patricia spoke, and her voice was cold with controlled fury. "Give me the name of the employee again." "Michael Davidson, loan officer." "I'll be looking into this immediately," Patricia said. "Margaret, I'm so sorry this happened to Amara. That kind of behavior is exactly what we've been trying to eliminate from our branches. I promise you this will not be ignored. I know you'll do the right thing, Patricia, but I'm not stopping with just you. This needs to be bigger." "I understand," Patricia said. "Do what you need to do. I'll start working from my end." Margaret's third call was to the local NAACP chapter. She had been a member for decades and had attended meetings regularly, until her legs made it too difficult. She spoke with the chapter president, a man named Robert Jefferson who had fought many battles against discrimination in their city. "Mrs. Jenkins, this is exactly the kind of case we need to shine a light on," Robert said after hearing the story. "It's not just about one child being mistreated. It's about the pattern of how people of color, especially young people, are treated in financial institutions. We'll support you and Amara however we can." "I appreciate that, Robert. I knew I could count on you." After the phone calls, Margaret sat down at her computer. It was an old computer, and she wasn't very fast at typing, but she knew how to write a letter. She spent 2 hours writing a formal complaint to First Community Bank's corporate headquarters. She included every detail. She explained Amara's 18 months of saving. She described the goal of buying her grandmother a wheelchair. She quoted the words Michael Davidson had used. She named Jennifer, the teller who had witnessed the incident and done nothing. She explained how Amara had been humiliated in front of other customers. She ended the letter by demanding accountability and change. Margaret printed 3 copies of the letter. One would go to the corporate headquarters. One would go to the local bank branch manager. One would stay with her for her records. She also helped Amara write her own letter, in Amara's words, describing what had happened and how it made her feel. Sometimes a child's voice could touch hearts in ways that adult words could not. It was almost midnight when Margaret finally finished. Her legs ached from sitting for so long. Her eyes hurt from staring at the computer screen. But she felt satisfied. She had not simply comforted her granddaughter and tried to make her forget. She had taken action. She had started a process that would hold people accountable. Before going to bed, Margaret checked on Amara. The child was asleep, but her face still looked sad even in sleep. Margaret sat on the edge of the bed and stroked Amara's hair. "Don't you worry, baby," she whispered. "Your grandmother is going to make this right. That man is going to learn that you don't treat people this way, and maybe, just maybe, we'll make sure it doesn't happen to another child." The next morning, Margaret mailed the letters. She sent one by regular mail, and one by certified mail to the corporate office so they couldn't claim they never received it. She hand-delivered the letter to the local branch, walking the 4 blocks despite her painful legs. She gave it to the receptionist and asked for a receipt showing she had delivered it. The receptionist looked nervous when she saw what the letter was about. That afternoon, James came to the apartment after work. He was a tall young man with kind eyes, and Amara had always liked him. He sat down with Amara and asked her to tell him the story again. He recorded it on his phone so he wouldn't miss any details. He asked gentle questions and listened carefully to every answer. "Amara, you're very brave," James told her when they finished. "What happened to you was wrong, but the way you're talking about it now is going to help other people. I'm going to write an article about this, and it's going to be published in the newspaper. Is that okay with you?" Amara looked at her grandmother. Margaret nodded. It's okay, baby. This story needs to be told. Okay, Amara said quietly. If it can help somebody else, then okay. James spent the next 2 days working on the article. He didn't just write about what happened to Amara. He researched the issue. He found studies about how young people are treated in banks. He found statistics about discrimination in financial institutions. Thursday morning came with sunshine and blue skies. Margaret woke up early and walked down to the corner store to buy a copy of the newspaper. Her legs hurt with each step, but she needed to see the article in print. When she unfolded the paper, there it was on the front page of the local section. The headline read, 10-year-old denied banking service after saving for 18 months. The article included a photo that James had taken of Amara holding one of her coin rolls. In the picture, Amara looked small and serious. The article told her whole story. It explained how she had saved for 18 months to buy her grandmother a wheelchair. It described what Michael Davidson had said and done. It quoted Amara's words about how the experience made her feel. It also included expert opinions about financial discrimination and the importance of encouraging young people to save money. Margaret read the article 3 times before Amara woke up. It was well written and fair. It didn't use angry language or make wild accusations. It simply told the truth, and the truth was powerful enough on its own. When Amara came out of her bedroom, Margaret showed her the newspaper. You're famous now, baby, she said with a smile. Amara looked at her own picture in the paper. She didn't know how to feel about it. Part of her was proud that people would know what happened. Part of her was worried about what people would think. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait and see, Margaret said. People will read this and they'll have reactions. We'll just have to see what those reactions are. They didn't have to wait long. By mid-morning, Margaret's phone started ringing. The first call was from a neighbor who had read the article. Margaret, I had no idea what happened to Amara. That's terrible. Is she okay? More calls came throughout the day. Friends from church, former colleagues from her teaching days, people from the neighborhood. Everyone wanted to express their support and outrage. Some people wanted to know if they could help. Others just wanted to tell Margaret that they were proud of her for speaking up. But the real explosion happened online. James had posted the article on the newspaper's website early that morning. By noon, it had been shared hundreds of times on social media. By evening, it had been shared thousands of times. People from all over the city, then all over the state, were reading about Amara and sharing the story with their friends. The comments section filled up quickly. Most people were supportive and angry on Amara's behalf. They shared their own stories of being treated badly at banks or other businesses. They talked about their children and grandchildren and how this story touched their hearts. They praised Amara for her hard work and determination, but there were also negative comments. Some people said Amara's story was probably exaggerated. Some said Margaret was making a big deal out of nothing. A few people even suggested that there must be more to the story than what was being reported. These comments hurt Margaret when she read them, but she tried not to let Amara see them. She knew that negative voices would always exist, but they didn't change the truth of what happened. By Thursday evening, the local news stations had picked up the story. Channel 5 News called and asked if they could interview Margaret and Amara. Margaret agreed but told them they had to be respectful and understanding that Amara was still upset about what happened. The news crew came to their apartment, set up cameras and lights, and asked Amara to tell her story again. Amara was nervous on camera, but she spoke clearly. She showed the reporters her coin rolls, still packed in her backpack. She explained how long she had saved and what her goal was. When the reporter asked how the experience made her feel, Amara's eyes filled with tears. It made me feel like I did something wrong, even though I didn't. It made me feel like my hard work didn't matter. That interview aired on the evening news at 6 and again at 11. More people saw it. More people shared it. By Friday morning, the story was spreading beyond their city. News outlets in neighboring cities were reporting on it. Regional news websites were posting articles. Social media was exploding with reactions. A hashtag started trending, Save for Amara. People used it to share the story and to post their own experiences with discrimination. Some people posted pictures of themselves as children with their piggy banks or savings jars. Others posted about times they had been treated unfairly because of their age or race. The hashtag connected thousands of people who all felt that what happened to Amara was unacceptable. On Friday afternoon, a major national news network called. They wanted to send a crew to interview Margaret and Amara for a segment that would air across the entire country. Margaret wasn't sure at first. Things were already overwhelming, but James advised her to do it. The bigger this gets, the more pressure there is on the bank to do something, he said. And the more people hear about this, the more conversations happen about discrimination and how we treat children. Margaret agreed. The national news crew arrived on Saturday. They were more professional than the local news with better cameras and more people. They spent 2 hours interviewing Margaret and Amara. They also interviewed James about his article and why he thought the story was important. They even talked to some of Margaret's neighbors who spoke about what kind of people Margaret and Amara were. While all this was happening, First Community Bank was facing a storm. Their phone lines were jammed with angry callers. Their email inbox was overflowing. Their social media pages were flooded with comments demanding justice for Amara. People were posting one-star reviews of the bank online, talking about the discrimination at their branches. Some customers were even closing their accounts in protest. The bank's public relations department was in full panic mode. They had never dealt with anything like this before. A story that started in one local newspaper had somehow become national news in just a few days. The name First Community Bank was now associated with discrimination and the mistreatment of a child. The corporate office issued a statement on Friday evening. It was brief and said only that they were looking into the matter and took all complaints seriously. The statement satisfied no one. People online called it weak and meaningless. They demanded real action, not just corporate words that meant nothing. More media outlets wanted to cover the story. Radio shows discussed it. Podcasts talked about it. National newspapers wrote their own versions of the article. CNN mentioned it during a segment about discrimination in America. The story just kept growing and growing, far beyond anything Margaret had imagined when she first made those phone calls. Civil rights organizations began speaking out. The NAACP issued a formal statement supporting Amara and condemning the bank's actions. Other organizations joined in. A coalition of community groups organized a protest outside the bank's main branch for the following Tuesday. They made signs that said "Banks for everyone" and "Respect all customers" and "Justice for Amara." By Sunday, the story had been shared over 50,000 times on social media. It had been reported by dozens of news outlets. It had sparked conversations in homes, schools, churches, and workplaces across the country. People who had never heard of First Community Bank now knew its name and associated it with the mistreatment of a 10-year-old girl. Margaret watched all of this unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. She had wanted to hold the bank accountable, but she hadn't expected it to become this big. Her phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Organizations wanted to offer support. Regular people wanted to express their feelings about what happened. Some people sent gifts for Amara. Teddy bears arrived in the mail. Cards with encouraging messages came from strangers. One man sent a check for $50 with a note saying he wanted to contribute to Amara's wheelchair fund. A woman sent a handmade quilt. The kindness of strangers was overwhelming, but Margaret was most interested in what would happen with the bank. All the attention was good, but what she really wanted was change. She wanted Michael Davidson to be held accountable for what he did. She wanted the bank to train its employees better. She wanted to make sure this never happened to another child. Patricia Williams, Margaret's friend on the bank's board, called on Sunday evening. "Margaret, I need you to know that the board is taking this very seriously. We're having an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. The regional president is coming. This is not going away quietly." "Good," Margaret said. "It shouldn't go away quietly. What happened to Amara was wrong, and somebody needs to answer for it." "Someone will," Patricia promised. "I can't tell you everything yet, but I can tell you that changes are coming. Big changes." On Monday morning, the national news segment aired. Millions of people across the country saw Amara's face on their television screens. They heard her tell her story in her own words. They saw the tears in her eyes when she talked about being accused of stealing. They saw Margaret holding her granddaughter's hand and promising to fight for justice. The segment ended with the reporter asking Amara what she wanted people to know. Amara thought for a moment and then said, "I just want people to know that kids can work hard too. Kids can save money and have goals and dreams, and we deserve to be treated with respect just like adults. Those words resonated with people. Parents shared the segment with their children. Teachers showed it in classrooms. Community centers used it to start discussions about respect and discrimination. Amara's simple, honest words captured something important, and people responded to it. By Monday afternoon, First Community Bank had no choice but to respond more seriously. Another statement was released, this one longer and more specific. It acknowledged that Amara had been treated unacceptably. It apologized directly to her and her grandmother. It promised that the incident was under thorough investigation and that appropriate action would be taken. It also announced that the bank would be reviewing its policies and training programs to ensure better service for all customers. But people wanted more than words. They wanted action. They wanted to know what would happen to Michael Davidson. They wanted to see real changes, not just promises. The pressure kept building, and the bank knew it couldn't just wait for the story to fade away. This wasn't going to fade away. This had become too big, too important, and too public. Margaret read the bank's statement and nodded. "It's a start," she told James, "but it's not enough." "Not yet. What do you want?" James asked. "I want accountability. I want real change. And I want Amara to see that standing up for yourself matters. I want her to see that when you speak the truth, people listen. That's what I want." David Hoffman was the regional president of First Community Bank. He was a serious man in his 50s who had worked in banking for 30 years. He prided himself on running clean, professional branches that served their communities well. But now, sitting in his office on Monday morning, he was dealing with the biggest crisis of his career. His assistant had compiled a folder for him. It was thick with printed news articles, social media posts, customer complaints, and email printouts. The folder represented just a small portion of the response to Amara's story. There were thousands more comments and messages online that couldn't all be printed. David flipped through the pages, his jaw getting tighter with each one he read. He called his legal team first. "Tell me about our liability here," he said. The lawyer on the phone was blunt. "Legally, we could argue that no actual damages occurred since the child didn't lose money. But from a public relations standpoint, you're looking at a disaster. And if the family decides to sue for discrimination or emotional distress, we'd be fighting an uphill battle. The court of public opinion has already decided we're the villains." Next, David called the head of human resources. "I need everything we have on Michael Davidson. Employment records, training completion, any previous complaints, performance reviews, everything." While he waited for those files, David reviewed the security footage from the day Amara visited the branch. He watched it 3 times. The footage had no sound, but he could see everything clearly. He saw Amara approach the counter with her backpack. He saw her place the coin rolls on the counter. He saw Michael Davidson's body language, his crossed arms, his dismissive gestures. He saw Amara crying. He saw coins scatter on the floor. He saw the teller Jennifer watching from nearby and then walking away. The footage made David sick to his stomach. This was not how First Community Bank trained its employees. This was not the culture he had tried to build. And yet here it was, captured on camera for everyone to see. The human resources file on Michael Davidson arrived. David read through it carefully. Davidson had been with the bank for 3 years. His performance reviews were average, nothing special but nothing terrible either. There were no previous formal complaints against him, but there were some notes from his supervisor suggesting that Davidson could be impatient with customers who required extra time and preferred to work with established clients rather than new or small accounts. Those notes should have been red flags. Someone should have addressed those issues with more serious training or coaching, but they hadn't, and now here they were, dealing with a national scandal. David called an emergency meeting with his senior staff, the branch manager where the incident occurred, and the head of human resources. They gathered in the conference room at 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon. "Let me be clear," David said, starting the meeting. "This is not just about bad publicity. This is about a fundamental failure in how we treat customers. A 10-year-old child saved money for 18 months to help her grandmother. She came to our bank, a bank her family had trusted for 3 decades, and she was humiliated and accused of being a thief. That is unacceptable on every possible level." The branch manager, a woman named Susan Torres, looked pale. "I wasn't in the branch that day. I was at a conference. When I came back and heard what happened, I couldn't believe it. Why didn't any other employee intervene? David asked. The teller, Jennifer, was right there. Why didn't she stop Davidson? Susan shook her head. I've talked to Jennifer. She said she thought about saying something, but she was afraid of causing a scene or contradicting a loan officer. She admits now that she should have stepped in. Yes, she should have, David said. And the fact that she didn't tells me we have a bigger problem than one bad employee. We have a culture problem where people don't feel empowered to do the right thing. The human resources director spoke up. I've reviewed Davidson's file. There's enough here to justify termination based on his conduct toward Amara. He violated our customer service policies, our non-discrimination policies, and our code of conduct. He made unfounded accusations. He refused to accept a legitimate deposit. He created a hostile environment. Legally and ethically, we have grounds to fire him. Then fire him, David said immediately. Today, right now, I want him out of this bank before the end of business today. Susan Torres nodded. She looked relieved that a decision had been made. I'll handle it personally. What about Jennifer? David thought about this. Jennifer didn't do anything actively wrong, but she failed to do anything actively right. Put her on formal notice. She needs additional training on intervention and speaking up when she sees something wrong. If there's another incident where she fails to act, she's gone too. The rest of the meeting focused on what else needed to happen. They discussed policy changes, training programs, and how to rebuild the bank's reputation. They talked about reaching out to Amara and her grandmother directly with a more personal apology. They discussed what kind of compensation or restitution would be appropriate. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, Michael Davidson was called into Susan Torres's office. She had security present, as was protocol for terminations. She explained that his employment was being terminated immediately for violation of the bank's policies and standards. She listed the specific violations: unprofessional conduct, refusing a legitimate transaction, making unfounded accusations against a customer, and creating a discriminatory environment. Michael Davidson tried to defend himself. I was just doing my job. I thought something was suspicious about all those coins. Nothing was suspicious, Susan said firmly. The girl had earned that money over 18 months. You made an assumption based on nothing but your own prejudice. And because of your actions, this bank's reputation has been severely damaged. We're losing customers. We're facing potential lawsuits. And most importantly, we hurt a child who deserved better from us. Michael Davidson was escorted from the building. He was angry and humiliated, but there was nothing he could do. The evidence against him was clear, and the bank's decision was final. That evening, First Community Bank issued a new statement. This one was different from the vague promises they had made before. This statement was specific and detailed. It announced that the employee responsible for mistreating Amara had been terminated. It explained that another employee who witnessed the incident had been placed on notice. It detailed new policies that were being implemented, including mandatory training on unconscious bias, discrimination, and properly serving customers of all ages and backgrounds. The statement also announced several positive initiatives. First Community Bank would establish a financial literacy program in partnership with local schools. The program would teach children about saving money, banking basics, and financial responsibility. The bank would also create a youth savings program with special accounts designed for children, with no minimum balance requirements and educational materials to help kids learn about money management. Finally, the statement included a personal apology to Amara and Margaret Jenkins. The bank acknowledged that words could never undo the hurt that had been caused, but they hoped that their actions moving forward would demonstrate their commitment to change. They also announced that they would be matching Amara's savings and contributing $10,000 to establish a scholarship fund in Amara's name to help other young people pursue their educational goals. When Margaret read the statement, she felt satisfied for the first time since the incident. These were real actions, not just words. She called Patricia Williams to thank her for pushing the board to take serious steps. You and Amara did this, Patricia told her. You refused to let this be swept under the rug. You spoke up and you made people listen. That's courage, Margaret. The next day, Tuesday, David Hoffman called Margaret directly. He introduced himself and asked if he could meet with her and Amara in person. Margaret was hesitant at first, but David sounded sincere. She agreed to meet him at their apartment the following afternoon. David Hoffman arrived at their apartment building at 3 o'clock on Wednesday. He came alone, carrying a folder and looking nervous. Margaret invited him in and introduced him to Amara, who sat close to her grandmother on the couch. David sat in the chair across from them and looked directly at Amara. "Amara, I want to apologize to you. What happened to you at our bank was wrong. You did everything right. You saved your money. You organized it carefully. You came to the bank professionally, and you were treated terribly. That was not your fault. That was our failure, and I'm deeply sorry." Amara nodded but didn't say anything. David continued. "I've brought some information about the changes we're making. I want you and your grandmother to see that we're taking this seriously." He opened his folder and showed them the new policies. He explained the training programs. He described the youth savings program and the financial literacy initiative. "We're also creating a community advisory board," David said. "We want input from the community about how we can serve everyone better. Mrs. Jenkins, we'd be honored if you would consider serving on that board." Margaret was surprised. "Me? Yes. You're an educator with decades of experience. You understand the community, and you've shown the courage to hold us accountable. We need voices like yours helping us do better." Margaret thought about it. "I'll consider it, but I want you to know that I'm not going to go easy on you just because I'm on a board. If I see problems, I'll speak up." "That's exactly why we want you," David said. He turned back to Amara. "Amara, we'd also like to invite you to be the first customer in our new youth savings program. We'll help you open an account, and we'll make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve. Would you be willing to give us another chance?" Amara looked at her grandmother. Margaret squeezed her hand. "It's up to you, baby. Whatever you decide is okay." Amara was quiet for a moment, thinking. Finally she spoke. "Will Mr. Davidson be there?" "No," David said firmly. "He no longer works for First Community Bank. He won't be at any of our branches. And if another employee is mean to someone, what happens? They'll be held accountable just like Mr. Davidson was. We're training all our employees to do better, and we're creating ways for customers to report problems directly to management. We're also training employees to speak up if they see something wrong, so what happened with the teller Jennifer won't happen again." Amara nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll give you another chance, but only because Grandma says second chances are important." David smiled with relief. "Thank you, Amara, that means a lot. I promise we won't let you down this time." Before he left, David gave them a check for Amara's matched savings and another check for the scholarship fund that would be held in trust and administered by a local educational foundation. He also gave them his direct phone number. "If you ever have any problems, any concerns, anything at all, you call me directly. Day or night. I mean that." After David left, Margaret and Amara sat together on the couch. "Are you okay with what just happened?" Margaret asked. "I think so," Amara said. "He seemed really sorry, and the changes sound good. But Grandma, I'm still sad about what happened." "I know, baby. That sadness might not go away for a while. What Mr. Davidson did hurt you, and that's a real hurt. But you know what? You stood up for yourself. You told the truth. And because you did, things are changing. Other kids won't have to go through what you went through. That's something to be proud of." Amara smiled a little. "I am proud. And Grandma, now I have enough money to buy your wheelchair." Margaret pulled her close. "You do, baby. You really do." 3 weeks had passed since the terrible day at the bank. In that time, Amara's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. Her story had been heard by millions of people. She had received letters and gifts from strangers across the country. She had been interviewed on television. And most importantly, real change was happening because she had spoken up. Now, on this Tuesday morning, Amara was getting ready to go back to First Community Bank. But this time would be different. This time she wouldn't be walking in alone with fear and hope. This time her grandmother would be with her. This time she knew what to expect. Amara dressed in the same navy blue dress she had worn that first day. When Margaret asked her why she chose that dress again, Amara had a simple answer. "Because I was right the first time. I looked nice, I was polite, and I did everything correctly. I'm wearing it again to show that I'm still that same person. The only thing that changed was how people treated me." Margaret smiled with pride. Her granddaughter was growing up fast, learning lessons that many adults never fully understood. They ate breakfast together, and then Margaret called for a taxi. Her legs were hurting more than usual lately, and the 4 blocks to the bank would be difficult. But soon, she thought, that wouldn't be a problem anymore. The taxi dropped them off right in front of First Community Bank. Amara looked at the building and felt her stomach tighten with nervousness. She took a deep breath. Her grandmother squeezed her hand. "You ready, baby?" "I'm ready," Amara said. They walked through the glass doors together. The bank looked the same as before, but somehow it felt different. Immediately, a woman approached them with a warm smile. She was a Latina woman in her 40s with kind eyes and professional clothes. Her name tag said Maria Gonzalez, branch manager. "You must be Amara and Mrs. Jenkins," Maria said, extending her hand. "I'm Maria, the new branch manager. Welcome to First Community Bank. We're so glad you're here." Her tone was completely different from what Amara had experienced before. There was genuine warmth in Maria's voice. She wasn't looking at them with judgment or suspicion. She was looking at them with respect. "Thank you," Margaret said, shaking Maria's hand. Maria gestured toward a comfortable seating area near the window. "Please have a seat. I want to personally help you open Amara's account today. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" They sat down in the comfortable chairs. Maria sat across from them, not behind a desk but at their level, creating an atmosphere of equality and respect. Amara noticed other things too. There was a new sign near the entrance that said, "Young Savers Welcome Here." There were brochures on a table about youth accounts and financial education. "Amara," Maria said, speaking directly to her, not over her head to Margaret, "I want you to know that what happened to you should never have happened. On behalf of everyone at First Community Bank, I apologize. I wasn't here that day, but I'm here now, and I promise that you will be treated with the respect and dignity that every customer deserves." Amara nodded. "Thank you." "Now," Maria said with a smile, "I understand you've been saving for 18 months. That's incredibly impressive. Most adults struggle to save consistently, but you did it. You should be very proud of yourself." "I am," Amara said quietly. Maria opened a folder on her lap. "So let's open your account. I have all the paperwork here. Mrs. Jenkins, I'll need some information from you since Amara is a minor. And Amara, I'll need your information too. Then we'll count your savings together and make your first deposit." Amara reached into her backpack and began taking out the coin rolls. She placed them on the small table between them, organizing them by type just like she had done before. Orange quarters, green dimes, blue nickels, red pennies. Maria didn't sigh or roll her eyes. Instead, she said, "Look at how organized you are. You've already done half of our work for us. These are perfectly rolled and labeled. That makes everything so much easier." They went through the paperwork together. Maria explained each form in simple language that Amara could understand. She didn't rush. She didn't act impatient. She treated the process like it was the most important transaction of her day. When it was time to count the money, Maria brought out a coin counter machine. "This will make it faster," she explained. "But if you'd prefer to count it by hand to make sure it's accurate, we can do that too." "The machine is fine," Amara said. She trusted Maria in a way she hadn't trusted Michael Davidson. They fed the coin rolls through the machine. Maria showed Amara how it worked and let her push some of the buttons. The total came up exactly as Amara had calculated. $437. Perfect, Maria said. And as discussed with Mr. Hoffman, the bank is matching your savings, so your opening balance will be $874. Amara's eyes went wide. $874. It was more money than she had ever had in her life. It was more than enough for her grandmother's wheelchair. Maria completed the account setup and printed out a receipt. She also gave Amara a small welcome packet with information about her account, a guide to banking for young people, and a special youth account debit card. "This card is yours," Maria explained. "It's connected to your account. Your grandmother will have oversight, but this is your card with your name on it." Amara looked at the card. It had her name printed on it, Amara Jenkins. She felt a swell of pride. This was real. She had a real bank account. She was a real customer. Before they left, Maria asked if they would be willing to take a photo. "We're documenting the launch of our youth savings program, and we'd love to have a picture of our first customer. Only if you're comfortable with it, of course." Margaret looked at Amara. "What do you think, baby?" Amara thought about it. At first, all the attention from her story had been overwhelming and scary. but now she understood that her experience was helping create change. If a picture could help other kids feel welcome at banks, then it was worth it. "Okay," Amara said. "We can take a picture." Maria took a few photos with her phone. In one, Amara held her new debit card and smiled. In another, she stood next to the Young Savers Welcome Here sign. In the last one, she stood with her grandmother and Maria, all three of them smiling together. As they were leaving, several bank employees came over to say hello. The teller Jennifer was one of them. She looked nervous as she approached Amara. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Jennifer said. "I should have helped you that day. I should have said something. I'm taking additional training now on being brave enough to speak up when something is wrong. Thank you for teaching me that lesson." Amara didn't know what to say. She hadn't expected an apology from Jennifer. Finally, she said, "And thank you for saying that." When they left the bank, Margaret and Amara stood on the sidewalk for a moment. "How do you feel?" Margaret asked. "Good," Amara said. "Really good. It felt so different this time." "That's because they learned something," Margaret said. "They learned that how you treat people matters. They learned that respect isn't optional, and they learned that when you do wrong, there are consequences." Over the next few days, Amara and Margaret used the money to buy a motorized wheelchair. They went to a medical supply store and found a perfect one. It was blue, Amara's favorite color. It had a comfortable seat and easy-to-use controls. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was exactly what Margaret needed. When the wheelchair was delivered to their apartment, Amara helped her grandmother try it out. Margaret sat in it and figured out the controls. She moved forward, backward, turned in circles. Tears rolled down her face as she realized how much easier her life was about to become. "Thank you, baby," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for working so hard. Thank you for caring about your old grandma." "You're not old," Amara said, hugging her, "and you took care of me my whole life. It's my turn to take care of you." The local news station came to film Margaret receiving her wheelchair. The story had a happy ending now, and people wanted to see it. The segment showed Amara presenting the wheelchair to her grandmother, both of them crying happy tears. It showed Margaret using the wheelchair to move around their apartment easily, smiling with freedom she hadn't felt in years. But the story didn't end there. Amara's experience had sparked something bigger than just one girl and one bank. Schools across the city started teaching financial literacy classes. Other banks created youth programs to encourage children to save. Community organizations began offering workshops on money management for families. Amara herself became involved in these efforts. She was invited to speak at her school about her experience. Standing in front of her classmates, she told her story honestly. She talked about the hard work of saving, the pain of being mistreated, and the importance of speaking up when something is wrong. "I learned that your voice matters," Amara told her classmates. "Even if you're young, even if you're small, your voice matters. When something wrong happens, you have to speak up. And sometimes speaking up can change things." Her teacher, Mrs. Richardson, was so impressed that she started a savings club at school. Every week, students could bring in money they had earned or saved, and the club would help them track their progress toward their goals. Some kids were saving for bikes. Some were saving for video games. Some, like Amara, were saving for bigger dreams like helping their families. Amara became the club's first president. She taught other kids how to roll coins. She helped them set realistic goals. She shared tips on how to earn money through chores and small jobs. The club grew quickly, and soon there were 30 kids participating. Margaret, true to her word, joined the community advisory board at First Community Bank. She attended monthly meetings and wasn't afraid to ask tough questions. She pushed for more community outreach, better training for employees, and more accessible services for people who didn't speak English as their first language or who had physical disabilities. The scholarship fund that had been established in Amara's name began accepting applications. The first year, 5 students received scholarships to help with school expenses. The scholarship requirements included an essay about financial responsibility and community service. The winners were chosen based on their character, their goals, and their commitment to helping others, just like Amara had helped her grandmother. Michael Davidson never returned to banking. After being fired from First Community Bank, he found it difficult to get another job in the industry. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. People who searched for his name online found articles about what he had done to Amara. He moved to another state, trying to start over in a different field. The consequences of his actions followed him, a permanent reminder that how we treat others matters. 6 months after the incident, a reporter from a national magazine contacted Margaret. They were doing a feature story about everyday heroes and wanted to include Amara. The article would showcase young people who were making a difference in their communities. The reporter came to their apartment and spent an afternoon with Amara and Margaret. She asked thoughtful questions about Amara's experience and what had happened since. She attended one of the school savings club meetings. She talked to kids who had been inspired by Amara's story. When the article was published, it presented Amara not as a victim, but as a changemaker. The headline read, 10-year-old activist shows that standing up for what's right has no age limit. The article talked about the policy changes at First Community Bank, the savings club at school, the scholarship fund, and the broader conversation about respect and discrimination that Amara's story had sparked. Amara kept the magazine on her bookshelf. Sometimes when she had a bad day or felt discouraged about something, she would look at the article. It reminded her that she was stronger than she knew. It reminded her that one person, even a child, could make a difference. A year after the incident, First Community Bank invited Amara and Margaret to a special event. They had completed their comprehensive staff training on inclusion and bias awareness. They had fully implemented their youth savings program. They had established partnerships with 15 local schools for financial literacy education. And they wanted Amara to be part of the celebration. At the event, David Hoffman gave a speech. He talked about how one girl's courage had transformed an entire organization. He acknowledged that change hadn't been easy or comfortable, but it had been necessary. He thanked Amara publicly for holding them accountable and for giving them a chance to do better. Amara Jenkins taught us that respect isn't something you give only to people who look a certain way or have a certain amount of money. David said, respect is something you give to every person who walks through your door, whether they're 10 or 100, whether they're depositing $10 or $10,000. That's not just good customer service. That's basic human decency. The audience, filled with bank employees, community members, and media representatives, applauded. Amara felt her cheeks get warm with embarrassment, but she also felt proud. She had done something important. She had changed minds and policies and practices. And she was only 11 years old now. Who knew what else she might do in the future? As the event wrapped up, a young girl about 8 years old approached Amara shyly. "Excuse me," the girl said. "Are you Amara Jenkins?" "Yes," Amara said. "I heard about what happened to you. I just opened my first bank account last week. The people at the bank were really nice to me. I think that's because of you," Amara smiled. "What are you saving for?" "I'm saving to buy my mom a birthday present. She really wants this necklace, but she says we can't afford it, so I'm saving my allowance and helping with chores to earn extra money." "That's wonderful," Amara said. "Keep saving. You'll get there." The little girl beamed and ran back to her mother. Margaret watched this interaction and put her arm around Amara's shoulders. "You see that, baby? That little girl feels welcome at a bank because of you. That's your legacy." Amara thought about that word. Legacy. She had learned it in school. It meant something you leave behind, something that lasts after you're gone. She was only 11, but she already had a legacy. She had made the world a little bit better, a little bit fairer, a little bit kinder. That night, back in their apartment, Amara and Margaret sat together on the couch. Margaret was in her motorized wheelchair, which she now used whenever her legs were tired. They were looking through all the articles, photos, and letters that had accumulated over the past year. "Are you glad we spoke up?" Margaret asked. "I know it was hard sometimes. There was a lot of attention and not all of it was kind." "Are you glad we did it?" Amara thought carefully before answering. "Yes," she finally said. "I'm glad, because even though it was hard, good things came from it. People are being treated better. Kids are learning about money, and I learned that my voice matters." "Your voice has always mattered, baby," Margaret said, "but now you know it. That's the difference." Amara looked at her grandmother with love. "You taught me that. You taught me to stand up for what's right. You taught me that respect is important. You taught me to be brave." "You were already brave," Margaret said. "I just helped you see it." They sat together in comfortable silence, grandmother and granddaughter looking back on a year that had changed both of their lives. Amara's story had started with a dream to help her grandmother. It had led through humiliation and pain, but it had ended with change, growth, and hope. And somewhere in the city, in schools and banks and homes, children were learning to save money. They were learning that their goals mattered. They were learning that they deserved respect. They were learning that speaking up for themselves was not just allowed but necessary, all because one 10-year-old girl walked into a bank with coins and refused to accept being treated poorly. All because one grandmother refused to let her granddaughter's pain be meaningless. All because they believed that one voice raised at the right time for the right reason could change the world. And they were right.